Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Minority Advantage. I have here with me Kusi, newlywed Kusi. Hey, show them the bling. Show them the bling. Kusi is a product marketing manager at Microsoft. I'm going to let her tell us all about it, her journey, and how it all started. Amma, welcome.
Thank you, Elvis. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. If I could, I would have you every week, but that's not possible. So, how is Seattle?
It's pretty cold, actually. I'm shocked. I'm actually shocked. It's usually not this cold, but I guess we're all experiencing. Even Texas, right, is going through this, and we are also getting affected. But Seattle, I can't complain. It's the best place I've ever lived. So
Oh wow. Okay, let's get to it. Before we talk about your role as a product marketing manager, I just want to talk about your upbringing a little bit. Just give us a few points, maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes about your upbringing up until where you are right now.
right. I think I was mentioning a bit earlier, off record was I had a pretty nice upbringing. Like it's something I don't deny. I was, by God's grace, I came from a family that could provide for me to go outside the United States. I schooled in Ghana. I went to an international school, did A levels, wrote SATs, and then came to college. Actually, I left Ghana when I was 17, came to college, did a bunch of studying abroad, which was also paid for. So that should tell you enough. I did a bunch of studying abroad in Europe, and I did a couple, I think, in South Africa too. No, actually, just one semester in South Africa, but primarily in Europe. Came back my last semester, went back home to Ghana, worked a bit with a family business, got bored, came back for my master's in Chicago, started working in CPG, consumer packaged goods, Nestle. Moved from Nestle to Pinnacle, which was more of a startup CPG. The startup got acquired just what I was leaving to Microsoft, and now pretty much here I am. So
Wow. Okay, so you've been places. You've traveled outside, and even in the United States, you've been to Chicago. You lived there, right?
I lived in Chicago, I lived in Cleveland, I've lived in Virginia, lived
Virginia.
in New York, I'm in Seattle now. So yep, all over.
Okay, so when you say Seattle is the best place you've lived in, it's valid because you've been in the other states.
Oh my goodness. So Chicago, wow. Yes, I totally agree. I lived in pretty crappy places. So yeah, off record. Yeah, Seattle makes it look it makes it makes everything look grand. So yeah.
You can't say off record because we are on record right now. So
Seattle is amazing. I think it's the best place I've ever lived, really. So can't complain.
okay, so
Mhm.
you mentioned a few things that you did. What other jobs have you held before this role?
So at Nestle, I was an associate brand manager for Stouffer's brand. So doing marketing for them. Nestle, people know Nestle from the Ghana context as Milo, Nido, Ideal Milk. I wasn't in the Ghana market. I used to have people ask me, so, why is the price of Milo going up? I'm like, I don't work on Milo. Like, I'm sure it's an Asian and mostly African brand. It's not as popular in the US. It's targeted more to Hispanics, I believe, in the US. But people were asking me those questions. I was focused on the US market. So I worked on a frozen food business called Stouffer's, which, by the way, was a 2.5 billion brand. Like Americans eat frozen food. And it was one of the biggest brands actually under Nestle USA. So that was the brand I worked on, doing a lot of like marketing, launching new versions of the product. So for instance, we could have like a chicken lasagna or something like that, and the next flavor we call renovation. It could be like beef or like pork, or like we could do packaging redesigns. We could do like commercials and stuff like that around it. At Pinnacle too, I also ended up working on an American brand too, which is Duncan Hines cake, which is pretty popular if you bake a lot. People know that. It was also, I believe, it was a 1.7 billion brand. Like that's yeah. In the grand scheme of things, I still did the stuff I was doing at Nestle, at Pinnacle Foods that got acquired by Conagra. Conagra is also a big food company. as well that acquired them, which I wasn't surprised. I thought Nestle was actually going to acquire them, but clearly I was wrong. But yeah, I've always been on that path of brand management and doing marketing for CPG prior to moving into the tech industry.
Okay. So product marketing
Mm.
management. If you were explaining this to your little brother who doesn't know anything about tech, who doesn't know anything about products marketing and all of that, how will you explain product marketing manager as?
I guess so. There are two types of it, and I'm gonna explain the part that I do. Right, the part that I do is to convince someone that I'm better than my competitor. Or if I'm talking to, like, let's say a 5-year-old, I'd be like, hey, let's say you have lemon and an orange, right? My job is to convince you that the orange is better than the lemon, pretty much, and get you to buy the orange. And in that term, what I tend to do is I can describe the colors, I can describe the nutrients of the orange, like orange has, all these nutrients that will help you in all these type of things. And my job is also to convince you to pay more, even for my product, just because I think it's better. So you see a lot of product marketers actually position, what we call position. In Ghana, we call it branding, right? Is how you basically sell yourself to others. And we've seen people like, come on orange, they put in like a bottle, it's an orange juice, they sell for premium. That's product marketing right there. But people don't really think about it in those terms. From a Ghana context, we think of it as branding, but a lot of branding work is really product marketing. It's basically how you market the product, right? It sounds very like, it sounds really duh, but it's not really duh, because you need to understand the market. You need to understand where you're selling, who you're selling it to, and what will cause them to actually pay that amount of money. People talk about, let's say, oh, Accra is freaking expensive. People are still building like massive apartments and selling it for so like high prices, and people are still buying it. Why? Because they've branded it in such a way that if you're rich, you think you need to own that, right? It's all part of product marketing. So
Mm.
my job is to
So,
convince
so
people that.
when somebody hears that, the question is, how different is product marketing
Mhm.
from just marketing?
Very good point. Product marketing and marketing, that's what I was alluding to earlier, saying that I focus primarily on the like, how do you message your product, right? What are some of the words that you use? I primarily focus on the outbound. Outbound is customer facing, the people you talk to. So the things that you see, let Super Bowl commercial, the things you see on TV, the things that you see on a website, the things that you see on social media. Those are all product marketing outbound side. Now, that is what I focus on. I focus primarily on the things that you will see. There's also the inbound side of marketing, which is more internal facing to, let's say myself and my engineering counterparts, or myself and my sales team or finance team. So we look at marketing in two folds, right? The product marketing and generally the other marketing that you're talking about is usually, I guess, let me put it this way. People look at marketing and the first thing they think about is commercials, right? But then there's that twofold in marketing. We call it, in marketing, we have that product marketing piece, but within that product marketing piece is how it's broken into the outbound and the inbound, right? And I focus more on the outbound. So you could be saying the same thing, but you basically, it's still under one umbrella, if that makes sense, right? So for me, I focus more on how do we talk about the product externally, how people are seeing it, how people are envisioning it, how people are thinking about it. And then the other folks who work primarily the engineering team, and they work with, like, let's say features and stuff like that. Like, hey, if we're building, let's say a Surface laptop or something like that, people want, I don't know, 100 pixels camera or whatever, right? Like, you are actually taking the customer feedback and what customers want, and you're communicating that to your engineering counterparts, how you're going to sell it, how you're going to price it, stuff like that. So that lives more in the outbound. but it still rolls under product marketing. Every marketing is still under product marketing, but then there's all these umbrellas that lives under product marketing.
Okay, so let's say I'm listening to you right now and you've done a very good job of explaining it to me using lemons and oranges. And now I want to be a product marketing manager, not just a marketing manager, not inbound, outbound. I want to be just like you, Amma.
Yeah.
Now I'm concerned with how much I can make as a product marketing manager. So you can give us how much you make, or how much, just in general, how much a product marketing manager makes in the industry.
Right. So in the industry, in tech, you see a lot of product marketing managers. If you're going to go for FANG, by the way, FANG is Facebook, Amazon, is it Apple, Google? Those are the companies, right? Yeah. I think. If you're going for the FANGs and you're going, Microsoft is not part, but we don't care. It's on it. But if you're going for the FANGs, Microsoft, you shouldn't expect, assuming you have 2 years working experience, and maybe you have like an MBA degree, you shouldn't expect anything less than, I would say, $115,000 base to start with, right?
115 on 150.
115K base. You shouldn't expect anything less than that. And that's usually a starting point. Now, the other thing that makes a difference is how much you negotiate, right? Like for me, I've been in the industry. I've been working at Microsoft for about 3 years. I worked 2 years prior to that. So obviously I'm a little bit way above that. But I always tell people that is a good starting point if you're going to be in tech, and especially in those companies. I know Facebook pays, I think Facebook pays even more than that for starting salary. But Microsoft generally, at least like from where I started, from where I know a couple of friends started, they started around the 115K range, but now it's been so long and I've had promotions and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit closer to the 200s, but that's my experience. So
okay, we'll take that. So you mentioned you had an MBA. You mentioned if you have an MBA, you can look at a base salary of 115, going. But what if I do not have an MBA? I just have a bachelor's degree. Can I make it in product marketing management, and will I be able to reach those same salaries? And if I will be able to reach those salaries, how long could it take me?
See, that's the thing I learned. And if I could do things all over again, I'll probably do it differently. I learned that a lot of these FANG companies, they don't pay you based on your level of education. They pay you based on your level within the company. So I know people who are coming in at, let's say, Microsoft level 60. If I have an MBA, I come in at level 60, and someone with an MBA comes in at level 60, same years of experience and everything, we're all going to make the same thing. Same thing. Your degree, whether you have a PhD, whether you have a master's, whether you have, it doesn't even matter, right? Like you're all getting paid the same amount, which sounds very painful when you think about it. But that's the advantage that people have. I know people, and especially it works to the advantage of those who go to top schools with just bachelors. I've had people who just, finish an undergraduate degree at Harvard. I have friends who finished at Harvard and just with a bachelor's degree, and they were making more than I was because they come from Harvard. I had friends who, I know someone who went to Yale undergrad making money, even more than I, bachelor's degree. I know somebody who went to University of Pennsylvania making more money, bachelor's degree. But, what I've noticed is actually a trend, especially in the tech industry. They pay based on the level you are coming in at. So if, let's say, you have the experience or whatever, I guess they value your job experience more than maybe your education, which makes sense because I believe even Google and some companies are taking away these education stuff because that's not real. They don't really pay based on your education. They pay based on experience. So.
Okay. So if you were going to do things differently, what would you have done differently?
Then I'll skip the whole master's thing and just start working. Like,
Really?
It's, yeah, really. Like, I think let me not downplay it because I think having the name Kellogg also helped me as well, by God's grace. But I think I've gotten to the point where education is just, I don't, it's not practical for me anymore, right? I feel like getting the real life experience under your belt is much more valuable than actually, you know, spending so much time in school. Like that's one of the things that my husband will tell you. He got his PhD in 2016, just when I was also finishing my master's. And we have the same years of experience. But he's a doctor. Me, I'm not. But we have the same years of experience. And if you tell him, he'll tell you so many times, like, I wish I'd gotten more work experience, more work experience. But obviously, it was more challenging because of visa issues and all those things that, you know, as international students, you struggle with. So you keep going to school until something works out for your green card and stuff like that. That way you can stay in this country. Otherwise, yeah, I think I will always prioritize getting more like experience under my belt than all these education stuff that I ended up doing. But I wouldn't take it for granted though. I still met friends. I still built a network through some of these you know, places that I went to. But yeah, I think I'll trade that. I really trade that for sure.
In case you guys didn't realize, Amma decided to name drop husband right there. So in case you guys didn't hear the intro, yes, Amma just recently got married. So that was the name drop right there.
Oh, that was hilarious. I should keep doing that. My husband, yes.
Okay, so you're saying you do not need an MBA, you do not need a master's to be a product marketing manager.
No.
But okay, so a bachelor's is good enough to be a product marketing manager.
I think a bachelor's is good. I've seen I have a couple of friends at Microsoft with just bachelors and they're doing just fine. They don't need, you don't need an MBA. I've seen people like I have, that's the interest. I have tons of friends with just undergraduate degree who it just worked out for them. They didn't need an MBA to be a product marketing manager. Especially like Microsoft. But then when I look sometimes online, like on LinkedIn or something like that, I see a chunk of MBAs as well who do it. And Microsoft actually has like a program. They call it the ACE program, ACE program, where it's like, you know, you're doing your MBA, you go through this rotational every 6 months within Microsoft. So it helps, but it's also through target schools. But I'll say that those who are coming with just a bachelor's degree, they're all from top schools. Honestly, it's the Yales and the Harvards and the Cornells that I've been seeing. So I think it favors you if you went to an Ivy League or something. But other than that, I think your best bets might be go through the MBA line and then come to tech.
Okay, so I'm trying to be a product marketing manager, not necessarily at Microsoft, you know, and all of that stuff. I'm trying to be a product marketing manager and I have no experience. No, let's just use you for example, right? Let's say with all the knowledge you have right now, and now you're trying to be a product marketing manager. You don't have your MBA, you just have your bachelor's, right? Just have your bachelor's from the same school you went to. You don't have an MBA. What will you do? What will be your next steps? What resources are you going to look at? And how are you going to progress to put yourself in a pole position to be a product marketing manager?
I think I would network, like, especially, I don't think I went to, well, the school that I went to for, especially for undergrad, it's not an Ivy League. I went to George Mason University, which is in Virginia, Northern Virginia. And I don't think it's not a brand name like the Harvards and the Cornells of the world. But if I was really, let's say I saw my future profile, I saw like an Kusi, Microsoft, blah, 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 I will probably start networking. And a lot of times people network with people, I guess, that don't really have a lot of power, if I have to say. People start networking. Like, for instance, if I'm looking for, let's say, a job at Facebook, I'm not going to, let's say I'm looking for a product marketing manager, similar role at Facebook. I'm not going to network with someone who's a product marketing manager at Facebook. Like, we intuitively, we tend to think we need to network with people who actually have the title of what we're trying to get to. We need to start networking with people who actually make the decisions of how you can get to where you want to get to. So in my case, I need to, if I were to be working through that, I'll start networking on LinkedIn, possibly with people with a director of, let's say, Surface, if I want to work on Surface, director of Xbox, if I want to be on Xbox. I'm not going to network with someone who's also a PMM, you know, within the same company, because we don't influence anything. is that the hiring managers are the directors, the general managers, the VPs. So matter of fact, the higher you go, the more your advantage actually, it gets bigger. And a lot of these VPs and whatnot are, especially with some of these tech companies, they are getting more and more concerned with diversity and inclusion. So, as a friend like to say, it's a good time to be Black in tech, because they are looking for talent like us. There are not a lot of us in there. So, go, if you see someone who's a director of this, hit the person up on LinkedIn, right? Don't settle for people who have your titles. Like, it really doesn't work out, honestly. We don't have a lot of power. We really don't. So yeah.
Wow, that's good advice on the networking side. What about resources? The things you will learn to get you prepared to be a PMM.
So I had a book. It's so interesting. Before I started even getting into this, I had a book that I used to read called How to Be a Product Marketing Manager. Literally, that was the title of the book. I don't even know where this book is, but I used to read quite a lot on it. Understanding like messaging framework, positioning framework. How to make sure that you're getting customer feedback, and it's all about the customer basically. For what I do, and getting them to think in a certain way about your product. But that's the first thing that I ever did. The other thing that I tend to do is I follow, especially on Twitter, I follow like marketing topics. I follow a lot of brands on Twitter. That way I learn so much from them. Like, how did they talk about the product, right? The Wendy Twitter account has positioned themselves as, yeah, we're a food company, but we pretty much like to say, quote unquote, stupid stuff on Twitter. And it generates noise, it generates conversations around it. So it gives Wendy like not this uptight type of, personality that people, a brand name like Starbucks, their Twitter account is not gonna be talking foolishly like the way the Wendy account talks about it, right? So I follow a lot of brands as well, hearing how they talk about it. The book that I read, I certainly I have friends also with who actually also hold my positions in other companies, like a network of us where sometimes, we just chit chat, kind of see, hey, what's up. They're not going to tell me, I'm not going to tell them what we're working on, but it's always good to tap into their knowledge and understand, how things are also going, how they approach certain problems as well. So I think those are probably the things that I have been doing. But overall, I consume a lot of content from random articles I come across that has to do with brands and marketing and stuff like that. So I think I overconsume, actually. I need to work on that. But yeah.
Okay. If you guys didn't realize, again, that's also one up in you guys, talking about she overconsumes as if it's normal, but anyway. You mentioned one thing
Mm-hmm.
earlier, but before I go to that, I would like you to get me the name of the book. That's later on, if you can
Okay, sure.
give me the name of the book. But you mentioned that you were an associate brand manager
Yep.
before you moved into your role. What's the difference between brand management and product marketing management, if there's a difference?
Actually, there's no difference. I think it's the same thing, but switched in the industry. When you're in CPG, consumer packaged goods, as people know as Nestle, Pepsi, Unilever, um, Coca-Cola, like those, the things you see on a grocery store, those brands, they internally we call it associate brand manager. When you get promoted, you're a brand manager, that kind of thing. In tech, they use product marketing manager. It's the same thing, really. So it's just an industry swap, I would say, of how they call it.
Okay. So basically, you can consume the same material and you can both apply for brand manager roles and product marketing
The
manager.
only thing I want to call out is if you're looking for like a world class training for marketing, it's good to start from the CPG side. It's good to
Mm,
start from the Nestle's and the Unilevers and the Pepsis of the world, the Nikes and all those things, because they train marketers. Like if you go to most tech companies or most top companies, you realize that the chief marketing officer comes from like a Procter and Gamble or from Unilever or Nestle, because they liked, that's where you get the classical marketing training. In tech, the engineers are like respected, they are like the brains behind the product. In tech, marketers are really like, yeah. They think marketers are dumb, I think. But they they value engineers more. In CPG, marketers are like the engineers in CPG. So you get the training.
Makes sense.
Oh yeah, it's classical marketing training. I think I got a lot of training there.
So basically what Amma is saying, if I'm wrong, tell me, is if you want real training, you start from the CPG area. If you want money, you go to tech.
It's so funny. It's interesting though that I've never moved for more money in my life, in my career. I've never made a jump because I wanted more money. As a matter of fact, I started at Nestle, I think probably like 110K. Yeah, as base, and sign on was ridiculous. Like I was making close to over 140, I think, at Nestle, but I didn't move because I wanted more money or more stocks or anything like that. But yeah, I think the pay too is pretty good on the CPG side if you go to the top companies. The Univers, the Nestle's, the Procter and Gamble. Procter and Gamble is basically like the Google, if I have to put it that way, of CPG. If you can get into Procter and Gamble, man, you're brilliant.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So now that we're talking about the salary side, it's a good segue to my last comment I was going to make. Amma is the founder of Worklopedia. I'm going to let her talk a little bit about Worklopedia and what she's working on with Worklopedia. But Amma is definitely trying to help everybody be able to get the most out of their jobs, get the most salary, get the most compensation out of their jobs. So I want you to talk a little bit about Worklopedia and what you're working on with that.
So Worklopedia, which I'm trying to, man, my developers are driving me crazy because they've put a halt to everything that's going on, and hoping to come back stronger next month. Please, God help me. But yeah, essentially Worklopedia is like, it's an anonymous platform where we all share information work related. It's not like a live chat or anything like that, but we share information around your manager that you've worked with in the past, your salary, and your team, like all anonymously. Because for me, I figured out those are the 3 Ps in anyone's career that really matters. Like the team you're on, the manager you work with, and how much you're making is super, super important. So I essentially, through divine revelation and through a lot of thinking and whatnot, came to that conclusion that we need such a platform to help each other. I've discovered I was actually making more money than some of my peers. My husband, which I love to say now, actually discovered that there was a woman on his team that they have the same level of years of experience, and he's actually making over 30 grand more than she is. Can you imagine? And so he had to even help her fight for more money. She ended up leaving because I think there was a lot of complications with that. But it's one of those things where we live in a world where people are not being paid fairly because they don't know, they don't discuss money. It's almost like a taboo type of thing. People are uncomfortable sharing. But knowledge is really power. The more we know, the more we make better informed decisions. People end up, everyone wants to work at Microsoft, everyone wants to work at Google, but no one tells you that there are some people who work at Microsoft or Google or Facebook and they're pretty miserable. Why? Because they don't have a good manager. People quit a lot of times because of their manager. People don't like their team, so they're always looking to move. Like these are things that affect people's careers and happiness in their careers. So for me, it was like, how do we build a platform where we can all share this information anonymously to help each other in our next career or in our next step for our career?
So that's a very good product you are building there. If somebody's sharing this for the first time, they're like, how different is it from any other salary sharing product out there right now?
So the difference between us and usually the first competitor they mention is Glassdoor, because Glassdoor has that, at least from a salary standpoint. Right now, there's currently no platform, no, that I'm aware of, Maybe I'll find out later, but there's no platform I'm aware of where there's any kind of review of managers. None, zero. There's no platform that I'm aware of where there's like ratings and reviews of teams. Now, when it comes to salary, there are a bunch of them. There's like levels.fyi. There's like blind, where people can share salaries and ask questions. There's like there's obviously Glassdoor, as well. There are places, I think there's one called Comparably or something like that I just saw recently. The difference between us and some of these platforms is we don't provide a range, right? So I will come in, and if I have to put my salary in there, I basically just put the number. I don't put it's between 130K to 140K. What am I doing with that number? Like, it means nothing to me, right? So basically you put in the exact number. So the difference with us is we're dealing with absolutes and no ranges. The other piece of it is we also factor in your gender, because your gender actually affects your compensation, whether you're male or female. We also factor in your level of education. We also factor in your years of experience and your years of experience with the company as well. So we know that these are the factors that affect a person's compensation. So if I am looking for product marketing manager at Microsoft and I search for product marketing manager at Microsoft, I'm able to see all these information in absolute terms, right? So that I know that, hey, I just got an offer, but I realized that somebody with a same level of experience and all these things that I also have is making this amount. It gives you a better leverage to negotiate. So, yeah.
Wow, thank you for that, guys. Once she brings up Wikipedia again, I'll definitely mention it again. You guys can check it out. It will basically take away some of the jitters when it comes to negotiation. You'll know where you stand, and that helps you get something more than what you would have originally probably asked for. Thank you very much, Amma, for joining me today. Guys, make sure to like and subscribe. And maybe next time I'll get Amma back on here and she can name drop her husband a few more times. Thank you, guys. Until next time.
Thank you. Thanks always. Thanks for having me.